Yes.
You just use the chief's number.
Yeah,
Quick.
That's because we think it's earthquake.
That's smart.
It's okay, Jim. Call this meeting to order. Roll call, Jim.
Commissioner Gandy,
Here.
Commissioner Campos,
Here.
Commissioner Butcher,
Here.
and Mayor Trujillo.
Here. Will you bow your heads and let me lead you in prayer and pledge? Lord, I want to thank you for this wonderful evening. Thank you for the weather. Hopefully it'll come and bring us a little bit of rain and moisture, Lord. Lord, I want to thank you for all my fellow commissioners here, as well as the staff, the citizens of our community, Lord, for working hard for our community, Lord, to make it great and make everybody feel like this is their home, Lord, and we're building this community together. Bless our nation, bless our troops, Lord, overseas. Bless all the volunteers who are out there doing all their best, Lord, for this community as well as within our nation and within other countries, Lord. I ask you to bless us this evening, Lord, with knowledge that we may come to good decisions, Lord, for the betterment of our community, Lord. And may we all be blessed and move forward thereafter, Lord. Thank you. Amen. Amen. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the Zia symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures.
Do you have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, make a motion that we approve the agenda as submitted.
Second. Had a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion we consider the minutes as submitted.
Second. Have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Moving on to Commissioner and Staff report. Wyatt?
Mayor and Commissioners, give you an update on some of the projects. They are paving, actually they just finished paving the section on Avenue H from 4th Street down to 2nd Street today with constructors on the CDBG project. Moving forward to the rest of the project to finish up 2nd Street, removals on Jefferson Street, and final, they will come in and do some luminary changes on 2nd Street in between, I believe, Avenue C to Jefferson, kind of the downtown, redoing some of the lighting there, and then final with the slurry seal to final everything up. Commissioner Campos, to follow up on Main Street, I did talk to Philip today. They were going to tear up Main Street on Saturday, but with the downtown festival, they did not. So they are going to start Saturday on cutting everything out and then pave on Monday.
This comes Saturday?
Yes.
All right, very good. Thank you, Wyatt.
And that's all that I have.
Weather permits. Weather permits, yes.
Yes, he said on Sunday, if it stays dry, if he sees chance of rain on Sunday when they got it open, they're not going to remove it on Saturday.
Any other questions? Gary?
Your Mayor and Commission have nothing to report, just my staff report later.
Thank you. Any questions about it? No. Jenny?
Nothing to report, sir.
Commissioner? No. I had one thing on the list, James. And the other day, during one of our meetings, I discussed about ending up our fees, our fines off, like let's say if somebody violates a firework fine, let's say for like popping fireworks after, day 2 or day 3, and how we're discussion on we feel our fees are just too low where somebody's going to walk in there, pay a $25 fee. And remember how we talked about ending up our fees to where it's going to be, where they'll be more hesitant to do something that's not in the community's favor because the punishment will be a little bit more greater. I mean, it just seems like our fines are just too low that people just, what's a $25 fine? They'll go pay their $50. And I know we had some discussion that we're gonna come back where it's mandatory, not where, someone else can make that a mandatory where it hits at that level and anything above they wanna add to, they add to. Is that possible, Patrick?
Well, I guess we could look at what is, within the discretion of setting a minimum on that. And is it for a particular type of offense? Or is it all of our fines and fees? Because we can certainly take a look at it.
I kind of like wanted to go over all our fines and fees and see what we are addressing and the amounts, because some people tend to take advantage of it because it's only a $10 fee. And some of them might be in the books back in the 70s, you never know, it had probably never changed, so we're.
Right. Well, what I can do is I'll do a quick survey and see what we've got with similar types of ordinances from other municipalities. And then we can kind of have an idea of where we are in regard to everybody else and see if we've got something that appears it's from $1970 versus $2019. Speaking of 1970s.
But don't you?
So but we can
See,
at
we
least
could
take-
find her right there for about $50, you know, I guarantee she'll have her phone left in her car. Oh, God.
Well, I'll get with James and we can take a look at it and see.
Okay, yeah, be something, I just want to be where they give them a little sting in their wallet to keep them
Right.
from doing it again, because right now it just seems like they're just pretty much walking over us, because it's just a bare minimum, and I don't know how much the judicial, local judicial have if it's just a mandatory to where it has to start there,
Right.
or she could set, or can we set that is what
Right.
something like
Take a
that.
look.
I appreciate
Sure.
it. Mr. Compost?
Nothing. Here, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Gandy? Chief?
Nothing to report,
Chief?
I just want to remind everybody the Station 2 tours are Tuesdays and Thursdays from 12 to 1. If anybody would like to come out, we're doing tours twice in those 2 hour or in that hour time frame. And it's limited up to about 8 people per session. So just let me know there at the station and we'll get you on the list.
Thank you, Chief. James?
Sir, so we got notice today, tomorrow at 5 p.m. at the town hall, the museum town hall. WH Pacific and NMDOT will be having what they have called the final public meeting over the Highway 82 project.
What time was that?
It's from 5 to 7.
In the evening?
Yes, sir. That's what we got in by email today. So that is tomorrow. And then also on Thursday, of course, Lee County Museum is bringing in a filmmaker, and at the Lee Theater they'll be showing this independent short film called Nasario Remembers.
Questions about that?
Are we gonna be able to advertise that meeting?
But Jaylene is putting it out as best we can. So
Got a short notice, huh?
yes, at 11:40 today we got the email.
Got it.
Patrick?
Nothing to report, sir.
Thank you. Moving on to public comment. Anybody?
I'm Elaine V. Hill, and I think along the lines that you were just speaking of on the fireworks, at least my concern is how long they are able, when they start and when they end. I certainly understand the 4th of July, but this past 4th of July, it really sounded like we were in a war zone. Now, I live on the north end of town on Tyler off of 9th. And starting about 3 weeks before on like Gore and 9th Street, it wasn't the little pop, pop, pop like we used to do as kids with those little bitty, whatever you did, little with our feet. But anyway, that started. And then by the time the 4th of July, my husband did take pictures of those items and sent them to Mayor, correct? And it's just amazing what fell in our yard, and I have no idea what fell in other areas. But it seems to me that we do need to, I know it's hard to limit. In every city you have this, but it just seems like that you have put on a beautiful fireworks show out at the park, but it seems like everybody's got their own fireworks going all over town. And I think that we really need to see if we are monitoring those places where they sell fireworks. I know they can go across the state line and probably buy or go other places. But I think we do have quite a few illegal fireworks. And being that we have a lot of vacant lots, we have a lot of dry grasses, and I think it's something that we should really consider. So that's the one thing. But I would like to bring up, and I don't know if I can do this right now, but I have complained numerous times about our loud cars. I understand that a lot of cars maybe are built that way, or we have a lot of catalytic converters being taken off of automobiles. I happen to know one day I was talking to somebody about it, and he'd gotten a new Corvette, and he says, well, that's what I intend to do with my car. And he was in his 50s, so I thought, okay. But I think that we have definitely got a problem. I know that on 9th and Gore, Tyler, Polk, I have very often said to myself and said to Bernard, I'm going to have you over for what I consider my dinner hour and try to sit out and have dinner. And it is awful. It is awful. It's awful in the morning. It's awful at night. I do think that we need to see about a way of catching these guys. You pretty well know who they are if they drive a black Mustang or a yellow Mustang or whatever. But I think that we need to have a little bit more, not sitting them police on the Jackson Avenue by the church or by that corner there. They need to be hidden where they can catch them, because by the time they get to a stop sign, they've slowed down. That's my concerns.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody else? Oh,
Yeah, my name's Tim Boyster. On what she just said, I live on the south end of town, the southwest corner, actually. It's not so much, well, it is allowed, it's the exhaust on a lot of the cars. What gets me is I can be sitting inside my house watching my TV, and I've got Mr. Thumper that's got his bass going about 90 miles an hour, vibrating the inside of my house, which I do not have in my living room, and I do not have a window in my front room to vibrate. I get the walls vibrating around there. And they kind of use my circle, Avenue Carter and Q, as a racetrack, especially when they come off of the apartments. And you can hear it all over town. I mean, there's a guy almost every Sunday morning that will drag down Main Street in his car. And it's a black Camaro. And the cops, police officers, they sit down there at Brian Urlacher and 9th. Two of them, boom, talking, and they're just talking, watching traffic go by when things are happening in town. And there's several spots they just park, so I'm parked in front, on the other side of the high school. It pulls in there, nothing else to do, flips around and parks. And they're not really cruising off down the streets and all this stuff a lot of the times. A lot of times they are. But I just wanted to reiterate what she said. It's getting almost out of control with the loud music and the loud pipes. Now, I like loud pipes on the cars myself. Well, I'm a product of the 60s, 50s, 60s. And, headers I love. But there's a place and time for them. If they want to do all that, go out and check the county. Go down the drag strip, down to the old airport in Hobbs. But maybe we can, help do something about that. And like the police, if they don't see it, they can't do a thing, no matter what it is. And they'll tell you that. I have my son living on Clayton. He had a problem with the people across the street with their music. And my daughter-in-law works in Texas, and she works at Stripes. She gets up 3 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the morning, got to go to work. They're over there at 7 o'clock at night blasting their music out. My son calls the police, and the police drive right in front of the house and park. Well, they see him coming half a block away, they turn it down. Police can't do a thing because they didn't hear it. You know? And I think that's a little ridiculous when they want the citizens to call in on something, but when you call in, the police can't do anything because they didn't see it. And this is one of the very few cities I've ever lived in that the public can't do anything. They can't call in because the police won't do anything because they don't see it. And I think that's going to change.
Thank you. I
Okay?
appreciate it.
Yeah, have a good.
May I address that?
Yes, sir.
Per se? Tim, one thing you can do is, as a citizen and anybody, and the chief will confirm this, is that you can file a report based on your observations, based on any evidence you might be able to collect. Like we have phones now that can record whatever is taking place that you don't like. You can file a report with the police, and the police will follow up based on your report, based on your testimony, based on your evidence, and especially if you got license plates, vehicle descriptions. If you know who the offenders are, then by all means you have a right to file a police report. Am I correct, Chief?
Correct, and there's also the other side, depending on what it is, it depends if the charges are approved or not, as you're aware too, so.
Right.
Just because we file the report doesn't mean that the courts are gonna do anything about it, so it just depends on what they have available.
Right.
And what we can do.
It all goes back to, if they don't see it, they don't do anything.
Well, that's not the case. That's not what we're saying.
Correct.
Now,
We can file
what's
a report.
happening is those are misdemeanors, Tim, that occur outside of their presence, so they can't enforce those, but they can pursue charges based on your filing a police report, based on the evidence you produce, testimony, witnesses, and all that. So there is another option that you can pursue, is what I'm saying. And I would encourage you to pursue that.
Okay. It's just like well, back in the day too, when you know, I'm from California, but back in the 60s, if you had to, when we rock and roll, windows rolled down, everything else, if a police officer rolled up beside us with his windows rolled up and he could hear our music, we got pulled over. And we either got a ticket or told to turn down in the city limits. Maybe that's something that this city could do.
Well, the same thing applies. If they see something again in their presence, they're going to act upon it. This is something that's taking place outside of their presence, so that's why we have this alternative, but it's in place.
Right, and also when our neighbors used to call in because we had loud music.
Mhm.
About the second time that the police came out there, somebody was getting arrested.
Yeah.
Like my son, they came out 3 times. Nothing.
Thank you. I won't, thank you guys. You guys are gonna have to go to the podium. You guys want to make a comment?
Well, what about our ordinances that we do have?
That's what's going to be enforced based on your police report.
Okay, because I would think that we did have ordinances regarding the speeding and the noise factor.
Sure, report those. Any violation you see, report it. If the police are not around, they'll respond and they'll take
But the
police.
thing about it is I mean, I don't want to argue about this, but I mean, like I said, I'm sitting in my backyard, and by the time I even could run to the alley or run up front, they're gone. And you can hear them all the way out to Erlacher. And I live on 9th and Tyler, and you can hear those things. And I just think that we've allowed this to go on for too long. I had company about a year ago, and that we were out, and they said, "What is that?" Oh, I said, "That's our evening entertainment, music."
What you can also do is request a close patrol of your neighborhood from the police.
Well, we
May I
have.
address that?
Yeah, absolutely.
We have,
had-
she has addressed it several times. We have sent officers to the location, and as you're aware, and as she mentioned, when the officers get there, they do hear them, but they're clear across the other side of town, and by the time the officers get there, who knows where they're at? So again, it's hard to enforce when we don't see, or
Right.
we can't control at a specific area at all times when we have the whole community with limited resources. So it's difficult to address one specific area when it's happening throughout the town, and that's what we're trying to control, is throughout the whole community.
But I'm sure you'll agree, Chief, with me, is we need some help from the citizens.
I agree 100%.
And if they can get a description, if they know the offenders, if they know a vehicle, if they know where they live, then by all means, report it and file an actual police report based on your observations, based on the violations that you see. That way you help the police apprehend these subjects, or at least get their attention. And I think that's the way to go. Would you agree, Chief?
I agree.
Any other public comment? Good to go. Thank you, Commissioner. All right, moving on to non-action items, James.
Mayor and Commissioners, one of the things that we do have coming up, and I believe it is September 2nd, the city is required to have our annual ICIP plan approved by the City Commission and submitted to the state. So what we've looked at is, of course, in your packet, we have provided you the ICIP that was submitted last year. The only thing that has changed, and it's due to the software that we're required to use, is the year. But that is what we had submitted last year. Amongst staff, we have talked about some of our top priorities that we think moving forward. And of course, the Veterans Memorial Park project, we do think that that needs to be at the top of our funding priorities as we have started this project. We actually open up the RFP for the design services on August 1st. One of the new projects that we don't have is we do need a new animal shelter. As you know, the animal shelter that we use right now is a former veterinarian's office. We do have Dr. Hornback out there using that portion of the facility. But as far as the care of the animals that are abandoned, we simply do not have sufficient space for the quantities of animals that we have. And I know I've visited with Laura about this, and we're looking at different strategies from a ordinance standpoint that we'll be bringing to the City Commission at a later date for consideration and hopeful adoption to maybe curtail some of it, but it is a problem that we do have. And right now our current shelter, the size is insufficient, and of course the state is coming out with new requirements that we will have to comply with as far as space per animal, different features that we have to have available. So we would like to go ahead and put this on our ICIP while we look for funding. Of course, a project that was not funded last year was the commercial street restrooms and concession stand. That's been a local priority for us. And our Public Works Department is also recommending that we bump up the Northwest Water Tower project, as well as the addition of a 3.3 million gallon water tank for storage of water. But those are just a couple of projects that we've discussed internally. We would like public comment on this. Of course, we encourage them to contact the City Commissioner. They can contact staff. We will bring this back as a discussion item at our next meeting in August, with our last meeting in August being the one where we will have a adopting resolution. A copy of the ICIP plan can be found in tonight's commission packet online, or we actually have an ICIP section on our website as well. Yes, sir.
Northwest Water Tower.
Yes, sir. That was actually has been planned for placement just right on the other side of the new fire station.
Okay. Couldn't think of a Northwest Water Tower.
Right, it does not exist yet. But yes, we per the comprehensive plan and the fact that we did have some acreage available over there, it makes sense to put it. Our comp plan actually says that a lot of our residential growth is going to occur moving to the northwest. So when we had to install a water line for the new fire station, we put one in there of sufficient diameter and size to where it will easily plug into that water tower once it's built. So the site's ready. It's just a matter of finding the funding for them.
On that animal shelter, you'll have a cost assessment, right?
We will have an estimated cost. Laura's actually looking at that, and as I told Laura, I said, What are the current standards? What are the proposed standards that will be in effect? And let's make sure that we have plenty of room for growth. I believe actually I guess you would call it our animal containment area. It's only about 2,800 square feet of that facility. So we probably need,
What do we
yes.
have right here in the Lovington? How big is
Yes,
it?
sir. Well, where we have the pound for the stray dogs and cats, it's only about 2,800 square feet. The rest
No,
of it
but
is
the
for the
acreage-
vet.
Acreage.
The acreage, I would have to get back to you on that.
Okay. Do we still have that behind the county prison? That old one, or did they tear that?
No, there's not, no,
There's
no,
nothing.
sir. That
Or
one
do we
was
still have that property
abandoned.
there though, right, as well?
That property is actually the site of the replacement radio tower.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, okay, now, I knew we did something.
We have other property available that could be
No,
utilized.
either or. I was just asking about that. That's right. Any other questions? Okay, moving on to action item. Do you have a motion?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion for resolution 2019-081, approval of joint powers agreement between the city and the state of New Mexico Administration Office of Courts for the New Mexico Magistrate Court project.
Second.
Second. Motion second, James.
Mayor and Commissioners, we received this from the State Administrative Office of the Courts. It's a basic JPA for the Magistrate Court project that will occur right over here on the northwest corner of Avenue A in Maine. I would like to start out with, these are just some updated renderings for this particular project as it would face, this particular view would be from Main Street, looking to the west. They have provided a basic site layout, which you see. Here's our library. So the court would actually have be front facing on Main Street. These four buildings that the city purchased would require demolition. Parking would occur on this particular side of the block for use of the magistrate court, but also to help accommodate some of the businesses in the downtown area. And of course, there would be secure parking for the staff of the court. One of the requests that we had was right now it's planned that we will only have one full courtroom. And when I say full courtroom, that means room for jurors. There is a need, considering the caseload that Judge Finger has, to have a second courtroom, but right now the state is only looking at a single courtroom model. This site plan, though, has been thought out by the design group to allow for, and I have no idea why it keeps doing that, but to allow for the inclusion of a second full courtroom, meaning later on, should the state see the need for a second courtroom at that facility, it can actually be remodeled without having to tear down from scratch. So what we have in our, as far as the project budget right now, the state is estimating $6 million for of course, site acquisition and improvement and demolition is incorporated in that with a $3 million construction. I believe they're estimating about $462 a square foot is what this facility will actually cost. They are currently in the design process. And what our JPA does, essentially the city will go through the, I guess, loan process through NMFA. They are looking at private sector markets, but the way that this loan works is this would be a 30-year lease agreement with the state of New Mexico in which they provide payments through their regular operating budget for the payment of the debt service on that. The JPA, as you go through it, you see that we have input but no actual vote as far as deciding who the contractor is. And there's a reason for this. That was the first thing that I thought, we're actually providing a lot of the land, and we're going to be maintaining and owning it. However, the way that this is going to be bid out, this is actually a 3-facility bid. They're building a new one in Belen. They're also building one somewhere in Lincoln County. And the purpose of this is to actually get a contractor to bid on all 3 of those particular projects to help cut down on some of the costs. So I did ask the AOC if the other communities were interested in scoring the contractors or actually having a vote in the process, that by all means, we would want to participate, but essentially, we are just providing, I guess, being the fiscal agent for this particular project. I view it as this is the state's building. We do have the advantage that we will own it, but we would ask for approval as it's been submitted tonight by this resolution.
Questions on it? No. James, is it still going to have that art gallery? Do they still plan on doing it?
There will be a public space. As far as what that use is in particular, that would be up to each, I guess the judge. But there will be an actual open space. If you look, the area in blue is actually the open public spaces, the lobby. So there's actually sufficient room there to have a nice inviting open public space. And all of the yellow areas are actually security controlled, secured access control.
Are there holding cells? Right, if so, how many?
I think there's 4.
Okay.
4 holding cells, possibly, looks like maybe 2 more up here.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Everybody good to go? Good to go?
Just one last question.
Yes, sir.
James, there is secured entry for those?
Yes, sir. Secured
There's
parking for
there's
the
parking.
staff, yes, sir, and also making sure that they keep the individuals under custody segregated from the public or separate from the public. So they would actually come in through the back of the entrance to where the public would not have any direct interaction with them.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
There's no other further question. Had a motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Do I have a motion?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a resolution for 2019-082, approval of the annual agreement between the City of Lovington, Southeastern New Mexico Economic Development District of Council of Governments.
Second.
Motion second, James.
Sir, Mayor and Commissioners, this is actually our annual agreement with the Council of Governments that represent us, as well as I believe it's 6 other counties in the state of New Mexico, southeastern side of the state. The cost is still the same, $3,303 per year. And this is a budgeted expenditure.
Any questions, brother? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to consider Resolution 2019-83, award of RFP for ambulance billing services.
Second it.
Have a motion second, James.
Mayor and Commissioners, as you know, we perform 911 responses and interfacility transports, the fire department does. So these are increasing at a steady pace, and the insurance industry is becoming more and more complex and a lot more rejections. And it's basically becoming increasingly difficult. So I know that the chief and I discussed it with some changes at staff that we've had. We thought that it might serve the city best to issue an RFP for a third-party contractor to assume ambulance billing and filing of those claims. So we actually had multiple responses. All right, we had multiple responses for this particular RFP from 6 different entities. And due to with the RFP process, Change Healthcare received the highest score, and they're the recommended contractor we would like to award this contract to. It is a 3-year contract with one option to renew for an additional 3 years. Essentially, they take over all of the client claims filing. Individuals would actually, instead of there's still some logistical issues that we work out with this company, but all billing and payments would go through this company. The charge for their service is 4% of the net collections. So based on what we've collected this past year, we collected a net in the previous fiscal year of a little over $1 million from insurance and private pays. So this would cost the city around $40,000. In addition to that, they have, this particular company has shown a proven track record of increasing the average reimbursement by anywhere from 10 to 14%. So even with that increase in the average reimbursement, we're not really expecting the costs of running the ambulance service to increase. Hopefully the increase in reimbursements will help to offset this.
Do you plan to reduce staff on that or anything like that?
only if absolutely necessary.
James, why is the insurance company denying some of these claims?
It's, a lot of it has to do with the transition to different coding. We did lose our one certified coder, which is a requirement, and it does take some extensive training. But also it's just timeliness of filing. Essentially, we have two individuals who are responsible for filing and preparing those claims. And they basically, they look for really, a lot of places, they look for a lot of reasons to deny a claim. We turn around, we refile it after making corrections. It could be from a documentation error, or it could just be a digit is in the wrong spot. You also have to realize that with a lot of your insurance companies, in particular Medicare and Medicaid, we have to write off a tremendous amount because of contractual allowances. So even though something costs $100, they may look at an average saying that, well, it's only $47, so we're going to pay you $40. It's a very complicated industry.
Thank you.
Any other questions about that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Do you have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion for resolution 2019-084, disposal of certain records per the city retention schedule.
Second.
Have a motion, second, James.
Mayor and Commissioners, if you recall back in 2019, January of 2019, we adopted the records retention policy that was essentially issued out by the New Mexico Municipal League Clerks Association. And this allows for the disposal of certain records that are no longer of use to the city, and we've retained them long enough. We actually have 3 different exhibits here. These items are, for instance, reservation booklets that we have for park shelters, phone message books, blank correspondence forms that are no longer valid, old financial like bills, FedEx air bills, correspondence copies of job descriptions, old bids that are no longer required to be kept, canceled checks. We also have other payroll transfer details, but these all have been evaluated by the staff in their respective departments, and they do meet the requirements necessary for disposal of those records. Granted, with if it's previously been digitized, we won't eliminate that particular record, but we're talking about the physical records.
Any questions about the board? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion for resolutions 2019-086, designing and dedicating the location.
85.
One above.
Okay, I'll retract that. I'd like to make a motion for resolution 2019-085, variance for 18 spaces at 1200 North Love, RV Park. RVMH Park. I'm not sure what that is. Second.
Okay. I have a motion, second, James.
Yes, Mayor and Commissioners, Crystal was actually on vacation, so she's not at our meeting tonight, but the owners of the RV park on North Love Street, in particular 1200 North Love, are asking for a variance due to lot sizes and layouts on 18 different lots throughout this particular mobile home park. The reason for these are this variance request is due to our changes in our mobile home code that they had a certain amount of time to bring it into conformance, and this is assisting them to do this. So the reason for the variances are due to the layout of the park and the spaces. We have some irregular shaped within the actual staff summary. If you look, for instance, space 21 is only 75 square feet shy of the required 4,000 square feet. So this was presented to our Planning and Zoning Board at their last meeting, and they did recommend approval recommend approval of the variance request for these affected lots.
Is that your recommendation as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions by the board? Had a motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. You have a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to consider resolution 2019-86, designating the location of an election day polling place for the municipal officer election conducted in 2020.
Second.
Had a motion second.
Mayor and Commissioners, this was presented by the City Clerk's Office as a requirement for our March 3rd, 2020 municipal election. It designates that this location here is the actual designated polling place, as well as early voting will occur in the conference room directly across the hall.
Any questions by the board? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. You have a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion for resolution 2019-087, approval of fiscal year 2020 municipal budget.
Second.
Had a motion second. Gary?
Here, Mayor and Commission, I apologize for the mess that was presented on the website with all the budget adjustments. So I've printed up something that makes more sense.
A lot of adjustments.
Yeah, throughout the year, we have a lot of activity that occurs. And when it comes to, let me see, I want to make sure I'm on the right one. So what we should be looking at actually is the fiscal year 20 budget recap. That's what we want to look at. So what I've given you is related to the budget adjustments for the current fiscal year. Forgive me, I'm ahead of myself. So the resolution 87 is to approve the final budget for the Department of Finance. And on that final budget, one of the attachments is our little summary of the budget, which simplifies things, makes it easier to kind of get the whole budget.
What page are you coming off of?
So this is not for 2020, correct?
That's correct. I got ahead of myself.
Okay.
I was so anxious to give you something that made sense.
The 2020 recap is under PDF, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Essentially, the biggest difference between this and our interim budget is a change in transfers between funds. We're in a situation where, with this fiscal year budget, we definitely wanted to make sure that we stay in compliance with the Department of Finance. And one of their biggest requirements are monitoring our cash balances, which I show here, a beginning cash balance and an ending cash balance for this coming fiscal year. And as you can see, we'll have a marginal growth in overall cash through this budget as proposed. And of course, this budget includes all of the same expenditures that we planned with our interim budget. It's, as I said, we just did a few changes in some transfers to prevent, to balance out how the expenditures are being allocated. The general fund, as a rule, usually has to pick up the slack anytime other funds don't have it. So I did my best to protect the general fund with these transfers. Kind of the biggest thing to note in all of this that our estimates on revenues obviously remain the same, and fortunately with the oil industry, with the way it is, we're doing well. We of course are doing our best to keep our expenditures below what our revenue estimates are. And that's really the key thing related to what we're doing here with our budget.
I got a quick question, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Gary, how much of a difference was it between the interim and the actual recap considering the transfer in?
The actual differences between the two, as far as cash transfers, were reduced by basically $1.2 million. Basically, we had the general fund was funding $1.2 million worth of activity that are no longer being expensed against the general fund now.
And why is it?
Well, one of the things has to do with what our estimated costs were related to the completion of the fire station. Instead of doing the $700,000 transfer, working with the city manager, I realized we had to only make a $480-some thousand transfer instead of $700,000 to the capital projects fund to help pay for our final payment on the fire station. Another couple of items were related to what we're doing with the CDBG project. Instead of using general fund to cover the shared costs that the city has related to what we're doing with all of the 2nd Street and all of the other projects that are going on with that, the CDBG, we now have the fuel tax fund is covering those expenditures as well. Those are two of the main expenditures that were reduced from the general fund. Let me see, another one was related to, let me see, where was it? Some costs, some minor costs related to the funds that usually need general fund contributions. For example, the youth center, the theater, and things like that. We made some adjustments to those also. A little higher estimates, for example, for the theater than what was done originally on revenues that it would generate as well.
Okay, thank you.
So you feel comfortable now, where we stand now than what we stood 6 months ago or even before we got the new software? I'm just trying to recap on everything that's occurred in the last 4 years. Is that, do you feel like where we're supposed to be now?
My personal feelings are that we are in a position where we can pay our bills and everything's doing just fine the way we are. I don't want us to make a greater number of obligations because I feel that we're at a cash level that we need to protect, which is why all those changes and transfers for the general fund. I want to protect the general fund as much as I can to keep it from getting to a point where we would never meet our reserve requirements.
And also, Gary, on when it comes to software and so forth, I like, like I always say, work smart, not hard. Are we working smart?
We're working toward the working smart. A lot of that has to do with everybody understanding how to use the software. And one of the best things that's helping us a lot related to the new software, and it's specifically related to procurement. The department heads are working very good at not only being able to understand their budgets and what they have available through the software, but through our procurement policy, they're all able to identify, hey, this is over budget, this is staying under budget, this type of thing. So we're doing a good job of really monitoring our expenditures well because of the software. And I even have some departments who say, hey, why was that expended to my department? Nobody told me about it. And that's a good thing because the information is readily available to any of the department heads who want to look and see.
Thank you.
I'd say one more thing.
Yes, sir.
In thinking in transparency goals, are we conducting our business according to best accounting practices here?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yes, we are.
You
Which-
can assure the commission of that, correct?
I will assure the commission of that.
All right, very good.
We're doing our very best to maintain, for example, the requirements of never spending, overspending a fund and doing something like that. And now that we have better ability through this new software to monitor those things, we can stay on top of that.
Any other questions by the board? Had a motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Do you have a motion?
This is Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion for resolutions 2019-088. Same thing, approval of fiscal year 2019 final budget adjustment.
Second.
Had a motion second, Gary.
Well, this was why I handed out all the paperwork to you, because I had this Excel file that I decided to load into the program, and not thinking ahead, Excel breaks one page into several pages, which is why I gave you those. So what this does is it just shows you essentially that we're required every year, and this is one of the things when you're talking about keeping in compliance, we're not allowed to spend money that we have not budgeted for. However, one of the big advantages we have, we are allowed to make changes to our budget at year end. And the Department of Finance requires us to submit a revised budget to them, and that's what this is a revised budget to give to the Department of Finance. And the document that I gave you is what the Department of Finance expects to have submitted to them. By doing so, we will keep ourselves in legal compliance with revenues that came in and expenditures that go out. We're not allowed to get more revenue than what we budgeted, and we're not allowed to spend more than what we budgeted. A couple of the things that the paperwork that you have doesn't really show is that we had an increase that we budgeted in revenues of over $3 million. And the two primary reasons are the fact that we received additional gross receipt tax, and then we had to budget for the grant funds that we received, or not grant, the money that we borrowed for the fire station. And then in regards to the expenditures, we had an increase in our budget of $2.7 million. And again, the largest reason for that has to do with our increased the cost of the fire station coming in at more than what we originally estimated. So we needed to increase the budget to compensate for that. That's the primary cause related to our expenditure increase.
So what you're saying is that our fiscal year, did we budget enough, or we were under budget at the year with all these adjustments?
With all these adjustments, we're coming in under budget as far as our expenditures, but our original estimates, for example, the Veterans Memorial property was not in our original budget. So all the money we spent for that, and then the purchase of the property for the magistrate courts, and then of course what I mentioned about the fire station, we needed to include in our budget for our expenditures that were not included when we first put our budget together.
So what you're saying is from a management standpoint, with staff and all, they kept us under budget, other than the two that you mentioned?
Absolutely. As far as the general operating budgets and what was pre-planned for all the different departments, I can't think of any department that overspent their budget.
Thank you, that's what I do. Any questions? No questions? Had a motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Do you have a motion?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion for resolution 2019-089, approval of fiscal year 2019 fourth quarter DFA report.
Second.
Had a motion is second, Gary?
Your Mayor and Commission, what we have here is, again, I just provided a recap. And the primary reason I've been giving you these recap documents is that the DFA reports themselves are not as easy to understand compared to what we have. we're translating our information into their accounts. And so what I've done here is given you, looking at our funds, how our fiscal year ended. It's easier for me to look at the hard copies I printed than on the screen. But as you can see, in this particular case, we do show with our beginning cash, again, cash is a big deal for the Department of Finance, that we had this $6.5 million, and we ended up the fiscal year with just over $3 million in our cash reserves that's reportable to the Department of Finance. And again, part of the issue there has to do with the fact that we had some unplanned, unbudgeted expenditures that caused us to be in that situation. The positive is, though, that we're maintaining a level in our cash that, one, keeps us in compliance with the Department of Finance, and two, helps us to continue to go and maintain our operations.
I'd like to make that comment on them too, that we're on plan. I believe it's for the longevity of this community that we made a good calculated decision on them too as well. With the veteran site and municipal courts.
Yes.
Magistrates courts, excuse me. I think that was well thought out, and I believe that it was well spent right there. So the longevity of Lovington is in good shape, especially the downtown areas. Any other questions about that? Commissioner King? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to consider Resolution 2019-90, certification of fiscal year 2019 fixed assets.
Second it.
A motion second. Gary?
If I may, your mayor and commission, every year, of course, we have the requirement to provide the Department of Finance a list of what we have on hand related to our fixed assets. And this is something that is audited every year by our auditing firm. So what we're doing here is just presenting to you a June 30th list of what fixed assets we have by department with the city. There have been some items that have been removed from the list. For example, vehicles that were damaged, equipment that's worn out, and then also other things that have been added. Again, new vehicles, new equipment. I don't have the specific list in front of me to say this one was added, this one was removed, because I didn't print it on this report.
Somebody has their phone number. Appreciate it. Close it. Any other questions about the board? Had motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Do you have another motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion for Resolution 2019-91, approval of fiscal year 2019 final inventory.
Second.
Motion second. Gary?
Again, this is another requirement that's audited by our auditors, a requirement for the Department of Finance and also our state auditor, requiring us to maintain a list of those perishable inventory that we have. So for example, a list of paper, pens, pencils, and this sort of thing, and show that we're being accountable with the resources that are given to us and that we use. And that essentially this is just an ongoing changing list. And what we're asking you to do is certify that, yes, we've counted all our inventory, and this is what we had at June 30th.
Any questions about the board?
Sure.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Do you have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to table the fact paying the bills till Art's here. Mr. Mayor, we should pay the bill.
Second.
Had motion second. Gary?
Your mayor and commission, looking for my bill paying list here. Put the laptop on top of it. Our single largest expenditure was with to the Constructors Inc. related to the street improvements with our CDBG projects. That's the $110,000. And then at the top of the list, starting with the after-hours heating, we spent $5,400 for the animal control. Their little mobile home building needed a new air conditioner. And then, of course, the CES expenditures of $11,591 was related to Phase 2 of North Commercial Street. And then moving down near the end, the candy cane expenditures were related to the replacing of a pump at well number 31, and there was more that had to be done at that well related to aligning the pump and some kind of air jetting. And then below that, the clean tech services for $55.99 are routine expenditures related to cleaning all the buildings and the rooms. But on the next page, the Norlee General Hospital for the $9,375, that's our monthly contribution for the Wellness Center. And then below that, oh, I'm sorry, this was the largest expenditure, the annual liability insurance for $297,000. And then below that, the Sunbelt pools, we still have to pay for things at the pool to keep it in operation, and we had to buy some Pulsar chlorine briquettes and some kind of drain covers. And those are all the expenditures that are above $5,000. If you have any other questions, I'm available for answers.
I just have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Gary, I don't know if you might know this, but right off the top of your head, maybe. The Reed Insurance Group, $297,000. How much of an increase is that over from last year, would you think?
They told
I
us
assume
how much
there's an increase.
it's. I wanted to say they said it was 3%, but I don't remember exactly.
Okay.
This sounds right.
It actually increased a little bit more in different areas, but the overall increase, I want to say, you're right, it was about 3%. Fortunately, when initially it was going to be substantially more, but that was due to the actual vehicle listing that we had. When we had to recreate that list due to the loss of our server, some duplicates were on there, and so actually Jaylene went through and straightened all that out for us, because we knew that wasn't right. We didn't own that many vehicles, and she was able to actually weed it and get it down to a very reasonable rate. So
Thank you, Jaylene.
she saved us.
Very good.
Who brings? Oh, 3. That stinks. All right, any other questions by the board? And most second, all in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Do I have a motion?
Let me make a motion that we go into closed session pursuant to section 1015-1, New Mexico State Annotated 1978, subsection H2, regarding limited personnel matters, city clerk interviews.
Second.
And motion second. Roll call.
Commissioner Campos,
Aye.
Commissioner Butcher,
Aye.
Commissioner Gandy,
Aye.
and Mayor Trujillo.
Aye. We are in closed session.
Into open session pursuant to section 10-15-1 NMSA 1978, subsection H2 regarding limited personnel matters, city clerk interviews, and nothing else was discussed apart from that item.
Second. Roll call.
Commissioner Gandy,
Aye.
Commissioner Butcher,
Aye.
Commissioner Campos,
Aye.
and Mayor Trujillo.
Aye. We are in session.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Shannon Lester as city clerk of the city of Lovington.
Second.
Had a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Congratulations.
Congratulations,
I'd like to make a motion.
and thank you, Joanna.
Thank y'all.
Thank
y'all
you.
very much.
Do I have another motion?
I'd like to make a motion to, whatever we do.